done, so now everybody has to see them.
I didn't hear what the amount was.
And I think they changed the number of hours you can carry over.
They did.
Okay, I'm gonna get started again. So keeping an eye to time and making sure we give William plenty of time to talk. We're now going to accelerate a little, so I'm going to talk faster than you can read the slides. All the slides will be available after the CLE, but we have to make decisions on, we have to do a triage on what's important and what's not, and death indemnity compensation for today's purposes will not be that important. Death indemnity compensation is not a benefit for the veteran, it's a benefit for dependents of the veteran. That can include spouse, minor children, and parents that were dependent on the veteran's income. The eligibility for it is the veteran must die while on active duty or must die of a service-connected disability or must be service-connected disabled at a totally disabling level, basically 100%, for more than 10 years, and then the cause of death is irrelevant. So those are three very different categories to think about. They all fit in the same box, but basically if a veteran passes away on active duty, whether that's a result of combat or training or any circumstance, their dependents will be eligible for death indemnity compensation. If a veteran is out of the service and passes away from an injury that occurred or was aggravated while they were in military service, for example, Agent Orange-related cancer, their dependents become eligible. If the veteran is considered 100% disabled for a period of more than 10 years before they pass away, regardless of the cause of death, they are eligible. So the cause of death is only important for the first two, it's not important for the third category. We're going to skip that slide in the interest of time. Spousal eligibility, they must be a legally married spouse. Their marriage must be valid in the state in which they got married or in the state in which they reside. This has become a little bit easier because marriage laws have become a little bit more consistent between the states. They must be married for more than 1 year. They must be cohabitating for the entire period of the marriage. This can only get a little bit messy on stuff like nursing homes or long hospitalization stays. Generally, a medical facility is not considered not cohabitating with their spouse. So that means if they have to go to a nursing home because of Alzheimer's and they receive full-time care there, that's not considered separated. If they go to a nursing home, but it's not considered a nursing facility, it's more like an older person's home, that's not considered cohabitating. Let's get a little bit more of the details, so again, we'll have a chance to review those on the other slide. There's more details about what living continuously means and what surviving spouse is eligible to. Again, I encourage you to review those in the slides if you're practicing this. I just want you to give you a general idea of what DIC is. For surviving children, they are eligible if they are under the age of 18 at the time that the death occurs, or they're 18 to 23 if they're attending school full-time, or if they are what the VA would include as helpless child, which is basically a disabled adult child. The amount of compensation starts at $1,300 a month, but as you can see, there's a bunch of reasons why that would go higher. So I think the average payout is closer to $1,800 a month. This is not exclusive from the veteran's life insurance, which every veteran is basically required to get. And I think that the basic rate for that is $500,000. So this is a separate benefit of that. The veteran may also be eligible for retirement income and other kind of benefits through the VA pension that are also independent of this. So this is more of a kind of a last resort type of benefit where all those other ones fell through. What's the floor that we can get at? There's a different calculation they use for veterans that passed away before 1993. I don't think you're going to encounter many people in that category. So, but if the veteran died before 1993 and they're first applying now, there are different rates of compensation. Parents are eligible. I just want you to be aware of that. They have to meet a very kind of tight criteria to be eligible for DIC for their child having passed away. Broadly, what you're looking at is a parent who's in dire financial situations and to where the veteran was contributing to the finances of the household before passing away. So for example, a single parent who had 5 children, the oldest joined the military and was sending money back home, passes away while on active duty, they will probably qualify for DIC as a parent. They apply the same way that you apply to any of these benefits, except they have to have the Veterans D-214 and their documentation showing that they are the spouse or parent or child of that veteran. If the spouse has children with the veteran, the spouse can obviously get additional benefits for having the children, and she will apply for both of them at the same time. It's possible for multiple people to receive the same benefit. It's not, they don't have to share the amount. They have independent eligibility. So it's possible for a veteran to have a child with someone and then be married to someone else, and both of them would have independent eligibility for this benefit. If the veteran were to pass away, they wouldn't have to pick one or the other, have to share it. There's a program that is sold to many veterans called a survivor benefit program, which is an annuity the veteran has to purchase. And it's managed by the DoD. This is a bad program, but a lot of veterans sign up for it. For the purposes of death indemnity compensation, they cannot receive the annuity and death indemnity compensation at the same time. So the veterans that purchase this and their spouses start receiving it when the veteran passes away, they later apply for death indemnity compensation. The VA says you cannot receive both at the same time. They will come to you with questions. So hopefully that triggers a little thing in the back of your head that says, can they do this? The answer is yes, they can deny you one because you're receiving the other. There's no power of separation with Social Security and the DIC. So they can receive both Social Security based on the children having lost an income earner, or for themselves based on their spouse's income, and DIC at the same time. So those are not mutually exclusive benefits.
So I just wanted to briefly touch base on how to request particular types of records. We've talked about certain claims that, particularly service-connected compensation and DIC. So how do we have to get the evidence that we're going to use to support our claim? And you can review this slide. It tells you how to request the VA claims file, the veterans' military and medical personnel records, the VHA's medical records, and then private medical records from private healthcare doctors. Just one note about the C file. The form that I've circled there technically is required, but generally it's sufficient enough to send a letter, a Privacy Act request to the VA attaching your 2122A requesting the C file of the veteran, and they will respond to that.
How long does it usually take in practice? Is it highly variable?
So I find, yes, it is highly variable. I find that I get military records quicker than I get the VAC file, but then again, that's not always true. In any case, it takes several months. All right, we're going to talk about the claims procedure, basically how you apply and then the appeals process if you've been denied or if you want to increase your rating. It's complicated because right now we have 2 systems that are going on at the same time. We have the legacy process, which is going to apply to veterans who have applied for their benefit and have not received an initial denial after February 19, 2019. So let me say that a different way. If the veteran was denied the benefit before February 19, 2019, then they are considered to be in the legacy process. If they were initially denied their benefit or they're appealing a rating, right, that they received, and that was received after February 19th of this year, they're going to be in the modernized process, and we're going to cover both of those. Okay, so let's say this is how the legacy process worked. This is how it worked before the new system, which is important to understand so that you can apply the new system now to veterans who were in the legacy system, right? Because they can opt into the new system. So what a veteran used to do, they had the option of filing something called an intent to file. This is not their application for the benefit. This is just a heads up to the VA that I'm going to apply for this benefit. And then they have 1 year from the date that that's filed to actually file the application for the benefit. And what was good about the intent to file is that, as Andrew touched on earlier, the time that the veteran would receive the benefit would actually start at this intent to file, not at the time the formal application was filed. So you didn't have to file an intent to file, right? You could just file the formal application and then start receiving benefits from the date of the formal application if it was approved. But there was a benefit to filing the intent to file because you got an entire year on top of the date that you filed your formal application if you did file the intent to file. So after the formal claim is filed, the VA oftentimes, as we talked about, sends a veteran to a CMP exam to get the veteran diagnosed for what they are claiming is their injury. This is discretionary, but I find that they almost always send the veteran to a CMP exam. After the CMP exam, the VA makes their initial determination, and then they send a letter to the veteran letting them know, we've approved you and you get 0 to 100%, or we've denied your claim. And these letters really are not expansive on the reasons that the veteran was denied. So here we have a graph, right, with the intent to file. Within 1 year, you file the formal claim. The form numbers are listed here for you to look up. It can take about a year sometimes to get a claim at the initial decision, but it can take less than a year. Again, it just depends. And then they make the decision, and if you're going to appeal that decision, we're going to talk about how you appeal that decision next. So under the legacy process, if you agreed with the VA's initial determination, again, whether that's a denial or you just agree with the rating that you received, you're going to file something called a notice of disagreement. Like everything with the VA, there's a form for it. The veteran fills it out and explains why they disagree with the VA's decision. On this application, the veteran can choose to either have their claim reviewed by a decision review officer, which reviews the claim de novo, meaning they re-review it as if it has not been reviewed before, in new eyes, in a new light. Or you can choose just to have the claim reviewed by someone higher up in the VA, but they take into consideration the lower reviewer's decision. No matter which path you take, the VA is going to re-review your application and then make another decision. The decision that they make and what they send you about this decision is called a statement of the case. It's a lot more expansive as to the reasons that you've been denied or continue to be denied or are continue to receive that rating, or if they've now approved you or if they've increased your rating. These statements of the case can sometimes be 50 pages. They are overly excessive with information. Really, it's a CYA type of thing. And so the veterans have a hard time, right, going through, reading all the information and understanding exactly what the problem was and appealing that problem. So that's why we are hired to help them, to kind of help them go through those muddy waters. So if you get the statement of the case and you still disagree with the decision, you have 60 days to file what's called Form 9. And you file that with the regional office, your local office, and that is letting them know, I'm going to be appealing this second decision, this statement of the case, and I'm going to be appealing it to the Board of Veterans Affairs. We call that the Veterans Appeals, we call that the BVA for short. So you file your Form 9. After your Form 9 is submitted, the regional office has to certify your appeal, and then they send that to the BVA for review. And certification can take quite a long time as well. And then once the BVA receives your appeal, they review all of the evidence that was reviewed by the lower regional office, and they make a decision. However, in the legacy process, you are able to continue to submit new evidence up until the date that the BVA made a decision. That's changed in the modern system. Well, Andrew will touch on that. But a veteran could continue just to say, if they went to the doctor again, if they got more statements from family or buddies they served in the military with, they could continue to submit that and the BVA would be able to consider it Well, side note, not to get too technical, but if you submit new evidence, they're supposed to send it back down to the regional office for the regional office to re-review and then make a decision, and then go back up for them to review, but you can waive that. I think I touched on that in this